Hello, this is Dr. Chris Cartwright from Robofest. I'll be doing our judge training today for our 2019 game BinaryBlocks. First, we're going to review the game mission. Then we'll talk about how judges will set up the playing fields and place the objects. Then we'll discuss unveiling unknown factors and the 30-minute work time that students have to work on their robots and programs. How judges will start and end a run. How the robots will deliver blocks, the two main types of violations, pickup and full reset penalties. We'll then discuss how you score the runs during the round. We'll go through some examples of scoring, including some videos. And finally, we'll wrap up with site procedures about how the judges will impound robots, proctor the areas, and record scores. Again, this year's game, the official rules were published on January 12th of this year. And again, pretty much all of the judging materials are available online, including the scoring sheet that we'll be using today. So first, an overview of this year's game BinaryBlocks. Again, the robot will need to deliver blocks. Black blocks will correspond to the binary number 0. White blocks will correspond to the binary number 1. The robots must all start. Again, there will be 2 blocks on the table, not necessarily of those colors. The robots then need to deliver the blocks so that the base blocks, the blocks on the bottom, form a binary number. For instance, in this sample, the binary number, at least the decimal equivalent, would be 10. So they need 8 plus 2, which would be 10. So again, going from the most significant bit in slot 4 from the top down to the least significant bit on the bottom, slot number 1. Again, for this one, it should be white, black, white, black. And for junior, they need to stack 2 blocks on top of the most significant white block on the base. There's also a game ending mission where the robot needs to stop at some location. In this case here, the game ending mission might be to stop on the initial start zone black line. All the robots for the game mission must be autonomous. Again, they need to arrange white and black blocks. They need to stack blocks on top of the same color block from the most significant bit from the left. Everything must be completed within 2 minutes. And remote controllers are not permitted for the game competition of Robofest. Points are earned based on the final location of the blocks and the robot. Here's a diagram of the playing field. Again, at the start zone where the robot starts, again, there's an imaginary area where all of the extra blocks located. Going to be 4 for junior competition, 5 for senior competition. Junior is 5th through 8th grade, senior is 9th through 12th grade. Some of the, again, you'll see at least the playing field dimensions labeled here. Again, many of the distances D1 up through D8. Some of these are fixed and a few are unknown. In general, D1, D2, D3, D7, and D8 are all fixed. D4, D5, and D6 will be the unknown factors. And B1 and B2, those block locations will in general be unknown. Again, D1 and D2 will always be 35 centimeters. That's basically, again, the initial maximum starting dimensions of the robot. D3 will depend on the table size, but will be around 40 centimeters. D4 is unveiled after impounding for both junior and senior. And that will be how close the blocks 1 and block 2 are from the edge of the table. Minimum 3 centimeters, maximum. D5 and D6 are the distance of those 2 blocks from the slots at the right. Again, those will vary. In general, D5 will have a maximum of 50 centimeters, D6 a maximum 9 centimeters. Those dimensions will be unveiled for the juniors. For seniors, those will not be unveiled until after impounding, so those will always be unknown for seniors. Juniors will have the work time to take into account those distances. Then the dimensions of the slots, D7 will depend on the table width. D8 will be fixed at 19 centimeters. There are several unknown factors on the day of competition. One is the facility lighting condition, the exact size, color, and texture of the table. Again, the blocks, the exact size, weight, and the paper shade will be vary slightly. And those are unveiled at the competition. There will also be a game ending mission that's unveiled just before the 30-minute work time for each round. During the 30-minute work time, teams may adjust their robot, they may change the code, or they may add programs especially for the game-ending mission. 5 minutes before the work time begins, all people except contestants and authorized staff and volunteers will be evacuated from the pit and room. Robots are going to be impounded at the end of the 30 minutes, and they will stay there until all robots have completed the round. There'll be 2 rounds for the competition, 30-minute work time prior to each of these rounds. How a run will be started. The entire robot initially must be inside the start zone at the start of the round. If the robot is going to push or carry blocks, both the robot and the block must be completely inside the start zone when the block is loaded either onto the robot or onto the surface of the start zone area. Again, a human player may load just 1 block at a time. The block can be placed prior to the official start signal, but only 1 block may be loaded either on the surface of the start zone or on the robot. Blocks 1 and blocks 2, they're already on the playing field. Again, those are set by the judges. They may be brought back to the start zone by the robot and then treated just like the other blocks at the start zone, if a robot delivers them back to the start zone. Again, if a robot returns to the start zone, it's going to be considered safe as long as all parts of the robot that touch the table surface completely pass the outside edge of the start zone, that black line, and no parts of the robot are allowed to touch the floor. In that case, a human player can touch the robot, pick it up, modify the robot, modify programs, select different programs. They can even, of course, reorient or turn the robot. Robots, again, there could be like additional configurations. If all parts that are used in competition must be impounded with the robot, but any additional parts, again, available at the start area may be added or removed while the robot is at the start zone without any penalty. And for the robot remaining intact, that only applies to at least the robot while it's moving around the playing field. The robot does not need to self-stop when it returns to the start zone. It just needs to completely pass the black line before students pick it up to avoid a pickup penalty. How a run is ended. There's a game-ending mission that is unveiled 30 minutes. At least the students have 30 minutes to work on that during the work time. A sample game-ending mission might be for the robot to stop at the start zone line, where any part of the robot could be on or over that black line. This year, the game competition time is only recorded if all other missions, as well as the game-ending mission, are perfectly completed. In other words, we're only going to compute competition time this year if the team receives a perfect score. Violations. Violations that require a robot. 1 is a pickup penalty. That would occur if a human player touches the robot either intentionally or unintentionally when the robot is not completely inside the start zone. If the human player touches any playing field material, such as start zone blocks, again, outside of the start zone, that could be either intentional or unintentional. Again, if any blocks are placed on the table by the human player outside the start zone, or if a block is placed in the start zone, but the robot is not completely inside the start zone. The contestants must wait until the robot completely returns to the start zone to place any additional blocks, and only 1 block may be placed at the start zone at any time. So for instance, if a student places 2 blocks in the start zone area, then that would be a pickup penalty. Okay. If one of the violations on that previous slide occurs, if there is a pickup penalty, the judge will announce violation, and the teams will have 2 options. They may restart inside the start zone with a pickup penalty. At that time, the team may request a one-time full reset, which will receive a separate full reset penalty, or they may choose not to do the full reset and then they continue as is with only the pickup penalty. Or they may just decide to declare the end of the run. There's a maximum of 3 pickup penalties. If a team asks for a 4th pickup, that will automatically end the run. And judges may use red cards as a way of keeping track of the number of pickups. This year, if the robot drops off the table, again, the teams are not required to pick up the robot. If the team chooses to pick up the robot to restart, then they receive a pickup penalty. If the robot drops off the table and the team declares in the run, then the run is just ended and there is no penalty. If there's a block on the robot while the robot is picked up by the contestants, any blocks that were on the robot during the pickup must remain at the location of the pickup unless a full reset is requested. if a full reset is requested, that's on the next slide. A team may modify or repair their robot or select a different program before restarting their robot in the start zone after a pickup. Violations: if a full reset is requested, teams are only allowed one complete full reset at any time. If the full reset is requested when the robot is inside the start zone, only the full reset penalty will be applied, no additional pickup penalty. If the robot is picked up and the full reset is requested, then 2 penalties are applied, one for the pickup and one for the full reset. Again, this year there's only one complete full reset allowed for a run. This full reset must be done by the judges, and it occurs while the 2-minute countdown continues. The timer is never stopped. Judges should reset the playing fields as quickly as possible so teams don't lose too much time. Again, the full reset penalty is assessed on the scoring sheet. In prior years, we've done what are called partial resets. This year, there are no partial resets. So again, if a team asks for a full reset, the entire blocks are reset. When the field is full reset, all the points earned from any previous attempts are lost or cleared. Penalties such as pickup penalties are not cleared. As a reminder to teams, they may repair their robot and or select different programs while the judges in the tables. Another important duty for judges is calculating the score. It's very important that judges keep track of pickup penalties and full resets during the 2 minutes of the round. The remainder of the scoring is done basically after the round is finished. Emphasis to judges need to score each bit slot, not blocks necessarily. So the scoring is done by slot, and we'll emphasize that on the next slides with the score sheet. A block points in more than one bit slot. For instance, if a block might be partially in 2 slots. If there's more than one unstacked block in a bit slot, only count the one with the most points. These are going to be referred to as the base blocks. Then for stacking blocks, first thing judges need to check is to make sure whether or not the bottom block is of the correct color and is completely inside the correct slot. So correct color and complete in the slot. Again, basically, if the base block, the bottom block, does not earn 15 points, then any block stacked on top of this will earn fewer points. And remember, blocks need to be stacked towards the most significant bit of the correct block in the same color to receive maximum points for stacking. Here's then the score sheet about how judges will do the scoring. Again, this is the top half of the score sheet. Again, judges will score each of these bit slots independently. Remember, slot number 4 is toward the most significant bit on the least significant bit. For each bit slot, the judges need to determine if the block on the bottom is of the correct color. If it is, then they need to determine if the block is completely inside the slot, basically means not going outside any of the black tape, which is not considered part of the slot. If the block is completely in, that block in that slot, you get 15 points for that slot. If the color is correct, but the block is only partially in, meaning some of the block is outside of the correct slot, then that would only be 8 points. And if the block is not of the correct color, then it doesn't matter whether or not it's completely partially in, that is only 4 points. You'll score then each of the bit slots independently, getting, again, either 15, 8, or 4 points. I think it's very helpful that the judges circle, again, at least whichever one applies, or of course they could circle a 0. If no block is in a slot, then of course the block will get 0 points. But each slot should earn either 15, 8, or 4 points. Next, the bottom half of the score sheet. Again, for juniors, there can be as many as 2 blocks stacked. For seniors, as many as 3 blocks stacked. The judges should circle the number of blocks stacked on a correct base block. Again, that's if the bottom block is of the correct color and the blocks stacked on it are of the matching color. Basically, if any other block is stacked, like if the base block is not correct or if the color is not correct, for juniors, that would earn only 9 points instead of 12. For seniors, that would earn only 6 points instead of 8. And for either junior or senior, there's a maximum of 24 points earned from stacking. Next item for judging is counting the number of blocks that are on the floor or touching the floor. Again, any block that is touching the floor actually cannot receive any credit for being inside a slot. And there's a maximum of 3 blocks touching the on or touching the floor that can receive credit. 3 points for block for a maximum of 9 points for that item. The judges then need to check and make sure that the robot is sturdy, and as long as it remained intact throughout the run, again, if the parts were removed intentionally by a team member, that is okay. But if anything falls off the robot, then they should not get the 3 points for remaining intact. Again, judges should circle, again, in these items for the count, and then basically multiply everything in the count column by the score column to find at least the total for that item. If a full reset is requested, again, there's a maximum of 1 full reset. That's a 3-point penalty, 1-time penalty. For each pickup, up to a maximum of 3 pickups, there's a 1-point penalty. So please make sure you circle the number. And again, of course, if there's no penalties or no resets, circle 0. Finally, again, check and see if the game-ending mission is achieved. That task, again, must be the last thing that the robot does. And the robot must stop in order to earn credit for that task. It must stop by itself. If the game-ending mission is achieved, that is 13 points. Then once you've scored all these items, judges will need to add up all those points for the total score. If the maximum score is 100, then the judges also need to record the time left in seconds once the game-ending mission was achieved. Otherwise, if the total score is not 100, leave the time left blank. Some judging tips. Judges, please make sure the score sheet has the correct team information. Check for violations. Again, team touching robot or blocks outside of the start zone carefully during the run. Judges must reset the playing fields as quickly as possible during the run. Keep in mind the time never stops. If the robot is not stopped at the end of the round, it cannot earn credit for the game-ending mission. The chief judge at individual sites has the authority to interpret any and all questions that may arise during the competitions. If all missions and the game-ending task are completed correctly, record the time remaining in minutes followed by seconds. This should be exactly as it's displayed on the timer. Make sure you fill out the score sheet and calculate the score. It's also important to get initials from a team player. This is basically indicating that the team players agree with the scoring by the judges. We also ask that at least one judge initial the score sheet. That's primarily in case there's any questions or if we have any trouble reading the judge's handwriting. We can go back if we need to answer any questions from the judges. Once you're done scoring the sheet and get the initials from both the team player and one judge, make sure then, judges, that you give the score sheet to the scorekeeper. Next, we'll go over some example scoring. So for instance, the teams will be given a target decimal number prior to the 30-minute work time. They'll also be given the game-ending task at that time. For instance, the game-ending task might be for any part of the robot to be over the edge of the table, on the side of the table near the start zone. But it actually, the game-ending task might be for the robot not to be over any of the start zone. If the target decimal number is 5, then for instance, for a junior team, they should have 3 white blocks and 1 black block inside that imaginary dotted starting area expanded off of the start zone. Again, the judges, of course, will place B1 and B2 blocks based on information that actually for juniors is unveiled for that D5 and D6. But D4 in general, how close those blocks are, will not be unveiled until after impounding. Seniors will have an additional block to stack, for instance, if they had the same target decimal number. In a perfect score case, again, of course, the white blocks should be basically in the slot corresponding to the binary number that corresponds to decimal 4 plus 1. And starting from most significant bit from the top, slot 4 down to 1, it should be black, white, black, white. And for junior perfect score, there should be 2 white blocks stacked on top of the white block, in this case in slot 3. And again, for this example, the front of the robot should have some part of it over that edge. It doesn't have to be the front. Any part of the robot could be over that edge. Okay. A sample example scoring thing. If this time if the decimal target number is 8, but with the same game-ending mission task with any part of the robot over that edge of the table just above the start zone. In this case here, if the decimal target number is 8, it should be 8 plus 0. So in slot 4, there should be 1 white block. But in this case here, for instance, the teams may be told that they're going to stack on the black color. In that case, for juniors, they'll have 5 black boxes just in that dotted area in the start zone. And again, 1 white block, 1 black block on the table, placed by the judges. Again, D5 and D6 will be unveiled prior to impounding, but D4 will be unknown for juniors during the entire round. For seniors, D5 and D6 are also not unveiled. And then, for instance, for a junior, if they stack 2 black boxes on top of the black blocks in the most significant bit, which is, in this case, slot 3, they would get a full score. As well, of course, also assuming that they achieve the game-ending mission. So for instance, the target decimal number is 8. Going from most significant to least significant bit, it should be white, black, black, black for the bottom blocks. Next example, scoring. If the target decimal number is 10, in this case here, it should be basically 8 plus 2. So we want a white block on the bottom on both slots 4 and 2, black blocks on the bottom in slots 3 and 1. For this example, the game-ending mission was to have the robot stopping with some part of the robot on or over the black start line. So the top case here was a perfect score. Again, all the base bottom blocks are completely inside the slots, and the correct color is stacked on top of the correct color blocks are stacked on top of the correct color in the most significant bit, in this case here, slot 4. The bottom case is not a perfect score. In this case here, all the bottom blocks are the correct color, but for instance in slot 4, the bottom block is not completely inside the slot, so it only receives 8 instead of 15 points. It does get, and because of that, it only receives 9 points instead of the full credit 12 for the stack blocks. To get full credit for stack blocks, the bottom block must be completely inside the correct slot. And so for instance, the top would be a perfect score, 100. Judges would record the time for that task completing all missions. For the bottom sample, the score is only 87, which would not be a perfect score. And again, we're assuming in both cases, the game-ending mission was achieved for 13 points, and the robot stayed intact for the 3 points. And remember, 15 points for a correct color block completely inside a slot. Only 8 points if a block is of the correct color, but only partially in the slot. Next sample cases, again, same game-ending mission. Target decimal number is 10. Remember from the previous, it should be white, black, white, black. So for instance, in the top case, the top slot 4 is the correct color. Slot 3 is also correct, but for instance, slot 2 should be white, not black, and notice slot 1 empty. So again, 15 points for the 2 correct slots 4 and 3, correct block in the correct slot. Only 4 points for the incorrect color block, and no points for slot 1. Then because in slot 4, they were told to stack on white. That is correct matching color. The base block is correct, so those get the full credit, 12 points for the 2 stacked blocks, 3 credits for remaining intact, and 13 points for the game-ending mission, for a total of 74 points. In the bottom case, again here, if we look at the base blocks, slots 4 and 3 are correct. Slot 2 is correct, but slot 1 should be black instead of white. So slot 1 only earns 4 points instead of 8 or 15. For the stacking, again, it should be stacking in slot 4, so that's not the correct color. In slot 3, again, that's not the correct block, so that's the wrong slot. But again, if it's either the base block is incorrect or it's in the wrong slot, as long as it's stacked, it gets the 9 points for both of those blocks. And then again, 3 points for being intact, 13 points for game-ending mission. Next examples. Here on the top, again, same decimal number target is 10. So it should be white, black, white, black. Notice in slot 4, the base block is completely in the slot, and there are 2 stacked blocks. In slot 3, there's no block inside that, so that gets 0. Slot 2, the block is only partially inside the slot. Note it's overhanging the edge. It must be completely inside the slot, which means completely on the table surface. not hovering over the edge to get the 15 rather than 8 points. And same thing with the black block on the bottom. It's overhanging the quarter. It's not entirely inside the slot. So those blocks, again, even though they're the right color, they only get 8 points because they're not completely inside the slot. The two white blocks are stacked on top of a correct base block, so that's the full credit 12 points for those two blocks. Remember, you also do get 3 points for any block on the floor, up to a maximum of 3 blocks. So 1 block on the floor for 3 points. Robot remained intact, and game-ending mission was achieved for 13 points. So total for that is 74 points. For the bottom case, again, slot 4, correct base block and correct stacking. Black is the correct color in slot 3. Notice in slots 2 and 1, there's a white block partially in both. First scoring slot 2, it would be the correct color block, only partially in 8 points. In slot 1, it would be the incorrect color, because it should be black, it's white, only gets 4 points, because it's the incorrect color. And remember, incorrect color doesn't matter whether it's partially or completely in. The 2 correct white blocks, they're stacked correctly in slot 4, get 12 points each. The 1 black block on the floor does get 3 points. This robot remained intact for 3 points, and game-ending mission was achieved for 13 points. Total score for that was 85. Now we're going to watch some videos to help you with scoring. So we have 5 videos to watch. And it's very important the judges keep track of the number of pickups. That was the first one. The team chose not to reset. So here for the second pickup, I believe the team did ask for a full reset. So that was the third pickup. And again, remember, only 3 pickups are allowed. So the 4th pickup automatically ended the run. And there's the scoring. Again, none of the blocks were in the correct slots throughout the table. They got the points for remaining sturdy and intact. And there were 3 pickup points. Actually, I guess I misspoke. I think there was no reset. So they did not get the reset penalty. That would have been 3 points. Okay, next, our second video. One thing to emphasize to judges, it's very important that the blocks be set up correctly. Again, the box should all have been located within that imaginary yellow box. So if you can see, there's a black box and a white box that are too far toward the bottom of our screen. So judges, please be careful that those blocks are set up initially in the correct location. Students are allowed to touch the robot as long as the robot is completely inside the start zone, but unfortunately, since that robot left the start zone, that should have been a pickup penalty. But again, I think the judges were maybe a little slow to communicate that to the team member. Again, I think this only counts as 1 pickup. But in general, immediately after the students pick up the robot, should return to the start zone before restarting. So this was now the second pickup. And in Jill's, only judges should reset playing fields. So that actually could have been considered a touch penalty as well, since the student touched the block. If the judge determined that the robot had not left the start zone when it was touched that time, that could have been okay. Once the robot leaves the start, any part of the robot leaves the start zone though, and it's touched, that would be a pickup. So we're keeping track. I think that was now the third pickup. Our students are allowed to touch the robot inside the start zone is fine. Just once the robot leaves, any part of it leaves the start zone, then touching the robot would receive a penalty. And that's the fourth pick, ends the run. And this time for the scoring, again, there was one block that was moved to the floor for 3 points. The robot was sturdy and intact, got 3 points. And there were 3 pickup penalties. But again, in this case here, no full reset. Total score was 3. Next, our third video. Right. Again, this is another example where the judges weren't careful about placing the initial blocks. Remember, all blocks should be behind that black line that extends off, in this case, to our right, or wood block. So a full reset was requested there. And there's also a pickup. Notice the judges are resetting the playing field. And again, for this one, again, in slot number 4, it was the correct caller, but only partially in, so that got 8 points. In slot number 2, that was the correct caller and completely in, so that was the full credit 15 points. The robot was sturdy and intact, 3 points. There's 1 full reset for a 3-point penalty. This team only had 1 pickup for only 1 point penalty. Total score was 22. Next, we'll look at our fourth video. So this is now our senior team. Notice they'll have 5 blocks in the start zone area instead of just only 4. The previous teams were all junior teams. And this team has loaded a block on the robot in the start zone. So as long as the robot was completely behind the black line, or at least or over the black line, that would have been okay. No part of the robot, though, should be beyond the start zone when it is touched. Otherwise, that's a pickup penalty. So for that one, again, in slot number 4, again, it was the correct color, completely in, 15 points. Again, there was 1 block stacked on the correct block. That was 8 points for seniors against 12 for junior, only 8 for senior because they have more blocks to stack. There were 3, again, maximum of 3 blocks on the floor to get credit for. So again, there were at least 3 blocks on the floor in this case. So they got 3 times 3, 9 points for that. And the robot remained intact. In this case, there were no more reset penalties. Total score for that one was 35. And now our video number 5. This is another senior team. Yes, we recommend that the judges put the blocks not too close to the table so that it doesn't interfere with the robots when they leave or come home or come back to the start zone. So for this one, again, in slot number 4, it was the correct color, but only partially in, so we got 8 points. In slot 3, it was the incorrect color, so 4 points. In slot 2, it was the correct color, partially in 8 points. In slot 1, it was the correct color and completely in 15 points. Number of blocks than 4 in this case was 2 for 3 points each. It was sturdy and intact for 3 points, and this time the game ending mission was achieved for 13 points, and the total for this robot was 57 points. Okay, so that ends our judge training videos. Next, we just have a few more things, at least the judges need to know for the day of the competition. Again, at each site, there'll be a chief judge. And then at each playing field, if there's more than one playing field, there'll be 2 judges per game field. The chief judge, again, will oversee all playing fields. About 20% of teams qualify for world championships, again, that advance from the local qualifying sites. For site setup, the site host will receive playing field initial setup documents with the dimensions for each division. Again, if there are multiple fields, for instance, if there's more than 8 teams at a site, the site host should make sure that all the playing fields are set up in the same direction, and it will help to number each field. And it's also very important to make sure that there's enough distance between fields for team members and judges to all stand at least 1 meter away from the field. That's the way so that team members or judges don't interfere with any of the robot's sensors. Practice fields should also be set up before teams arrive, so teams can practice right when they arrive. Confidential items, such as the site host setup documents, should be kept secure, again, and not disclosed to the team members. The impound table will have team placemats for each robot. It's also important that you assign an impound proctor to watch that table at all times. The pit area, there should be team signs on all tables. It's also important to assign proctors to watch the pit area during the work time and during rounds. As for recommended setup, again, it probably helps to have a centralized timer, although you can work with individual timers at individual playing fields if it's not convenient to have a centralized timer. Again, make sure you have, all sites should have 2 judges for each playing field. All sites will have 1 chief judge. The chief judge will work with the scorekeeper. The scorekeeper will be provided with a laptop with an Excel spreadsheet for recording the scores. The impound area should be blocked and supervised at all times. Charging of robots is not allowed in the impound area. About the field and pit access. Again, only contestants are allowed to access the pit area, the team tables, the practice fields, and the official game fields throughout the competition day. That includes the setup time before opening ceremonies, during the work time, and during breaks. In general, adult coaches, mentors, and other volunteers are allowed to assist with transporting team materials if necessary. But once they drop off these materials, they should then leave the area, and that area closed off basically to everyone except for contestants for the entire competition day until the competition is over. At the start of the 30-minute work time, teams will be given an unknown task and factors data sheet. It will look like this. It will have, for instance, the game ending task as part of that here in that purple box. Again, it'll show, basically, of course, which colors that they need to stack the boxes on. And that include, again, how many blocks should be in the start zone, that dotted area. D4, again, is not unveiled for anyone until after unpounding. For juniors, they will know that distance D5 and D6, how far blocks B1 and B2 are from the slots. That information, though, is not unveiled to seniors until after impounding. For both juniors and seniors, they'll be given the binary equivalent. Again, will determine where they need to locate the bottom blocks. And the end task, again, will be pictured as well as given verbally. During the work time, students will have 30 minutes to work on the robots or programs. The MC will make announcements, again, warnings when 10 minutes and 5 minutes remain for the work time. Again, in general, there should be no communication between contestants and parents or coaches or any adults during the 30-minute work time. If there's any non-game related communication that's necessary, for instance, like any emergency situations or something, coaches or parents should speak to team members away from the pit area. Again, the team member should be escorted out of the pit area, and that communication should be under the supervision of a judge or proctor. Keep in mind the 30-minute work time, all timers in Robofest never stop, so there's no additional time if students need to, again, to go away from non-game related communication. Proctor responsibilities, there's a list of this, which is available on the Robofest website, and the violation report form are provided to the site host, and site hosts will use both these. Again, a list of proctor responsibilities and a violation report sheet. For the impound procedure for judges, each team will have a designated placemat with the team ID and team name. This should be on a table set away from the pit and spectator areas. This is, again, where the robots are placed between the end of the work time and the end of the game round. Basically, if a robot is not called up to compete, the robot should remain at this impound area, again, while other teams are competing. All work should stop, again, when the work time is over, and teams must be lined up at the impound area. And again, hopefully, again, teams can impound those robots as quickly as possible. The impound table should be blocked and supervised at all times. Only one member of the team should present their robot to the impound area so that the area does not get too congested. All their team members, again, if they're not impounding the robot, they should remain at the team table until, again, they're told that they should, again, go to the spectator area when the round's ready to begin. For judges, for the impound procedure, robots will be checked for legal parts. Basically, any type of part is allowed as long as it's within the size dimensions. For juniors, though, they are allowed only one controller. So for junior teams, judges will need to check the number of controllers. Senior teams are allowed more than one controller. All robots are required to have a Robofest team ID, again, with the team number and the team name. There should be like a label or sticker of that on top of the robot, someplace where the judges can see it. Judges also need to check the starting size and expanding size of any robots. The maximum starting width and length is only 35 centimeters long by 35 centimeters wide. General judges will have a little board to check those dimensions. Judges should also ask the teams to show the robots in any expanded form. The maximum dimensions when it's expanding are 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters. In the box below, that would fill out the entire black area. When robots are checked, the wires are not counted as part of the robot, so those actually stick out from the measured area, as you can see in this picture here. So the maximum dimensions, again, are only basically of the major parts of the robot, including any sensors or, again, the main construction of the robot, but ignoring the wires. Also part of the robot procedure, robots are not allowed to use any of the game elements. So for this year means they could not use white or black covered tissue boxes. Or of course any of the wood blocks like for the start zone. If the robot passes inspection, it's placed on its team placemat. Again, we recommend that teams might want to check the size of the robots early, just to make sure they don't need to make any last minute modifications. If the robot, though, does not meet the inspection, or for instance, is missing a label, or is not in the correct size, teams can try and, again, take the robot back as long as it's before the impounding time to make sure the robot meets all the specifications. Teams must make sure that they're ready before the ending of the impound time. We certainly encourage teams to impound their robot early. If they're basically done, they don't need to just sit there until the work time is over. That certainly helps the judges in making sure the competition is efficient, so we don't have a big line of teams waiting to impound at the end of the work time. So teams are allowed to impound early if they so choose. Also part of the impound procedure, reminder to teams, they need to make sure they charge their robots fully before bringing the robot to the impound. Charging will not be allowed inside the impound area. And robots must be impounded before, again, before the end of the announced impounding period. If a robot is not impounded when that time ends, the robot will not be allowed to compete in that round. It's possible, for instance, if a robot is not ready for round one, again, of course, the students would still have 30 minutes later to work on the robots. They might be able to get the robot ready for round two. Once a robot enters the impound area, it should not be touched or removed by anyone for any reason. Next, proctoring the pit area. Again, the major violations to watch for would be communication of any kind, either verbal or electronic. Again, there's like no cell phones allowed in the pit area. There should be no emailing, no wireless communication, and there should also be like teams in general should only, again, work on their own robots or own laptops. They should not touch any other team's equipment or materials. And again, violations, again, not only should the pit be proctored, but also the practice fields and official game fields. Again, there should be only contestants in all these areas, no parents or coaches or any adult. It's also important to make sure that someone proctors the impound area to make sure that no robots are disturbed in that area. If a violation is observed in any of the pit areas or practice areas, game areas, or impound area, again, the team that is responsible for the violation, that team sign should be marked either on the team table or the impound area, and that violation should be reported to the chief proctor using the violation form. The team ID will be displayed on the screen, again, to let the teams know and to let everyone else know that a team was found in violation. Again, the chief proctor and the chief judge will determine if any further action is required. For instance, possibly a point penalty for a minor violation. For a major violation, of course, the penalty could be maximum of disqualification. For scorekeeping, an Excel file is going to be provided to the site host, and this should be provided then to the scorekeeper. The scorekeeper should carefully enter the scores and the time remaining for each round. Those will be at the bottom of the score sheet. It is highly recommended that a second person, the chief judge or someone the chief judge designates, should verify the calculation and the data entry, as well as verify the actual score sheets themselves to make sure, for instance, that all the points were added up correctly by the judges. If possible, we also recommend that you project the scores on the screen so that teams can validate the data to make sure the data was entered correctly. But we ask that you don't display the rank. Again, we want the trophy winners to be a surprise at the end of the competition. The spreadsheet will automatically calculate tiebreakers, so the scorekeeper doesn't need to worry about that. If two teams, again, are tied, then there may be a rerun that is required. But the score sheet, again, will basically determine whether or not a rerun is required. Reruns are only required to determine trophy winners. We certainly encourage all judges to read the official 2019 game rules. Again, hopefully we've given you the major details that you need to know to judge the competition successfully. I would like to point out there are lots of frequently asked questions as part of the game rules that cover very specific situations. Hopefully we've gone over the general guidelines in this presentation. Judges, please make sure you read the official rules, especially those FAQs on or before the day of competition. If you have additional questions, we recommend that you contact Robofest headquarters. The easiest way to do that is probably by sending us an email, and that should be robofest@ltu.edu. So sorry, there's a missing U there on that link. We'll correct that. And thank you for listening to this session. And we look forward to your participating as a judge for this year's game competition. Thank you.